Your emotions are your board of directors. They have wisdom to them, they have counsel, but your logical part of you needs to be the CEO, the final decision maker. Consult your board of directors, but you're the leader. You need to make the decision, right? And it's the same with emotions and logic. And so when we act out of logic to the greatest degree possible, we're creating that environment where we're probably, where we make a better decision.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand.
Is influence really just clever manipulation, or is there a way to persuade others that honors both parties and creates lasting change? Today, we're diving into the transformative power of genuine influence as we welcome Bob Burg back to the show. As the co-author of the Go Giver book series, their Go Giver philosophy has created a worldwide movement, and now he's back with their most recent book, The Go Giver Influencer. This one tackles how hard it is for us to disagree productively. Join us as Bob explains the secrets to finding common ground.
Bob, welcome back to Be Bold Branding.
Michael and Tanya, great to be with you guys.
You're always so much fun, Bob. We just learn so much every time we have you on.
Yes, we do.
And we're looking forward. This is going to be no different as we sort of unpack this Go Giver Influencer book. We've asked you to talk about that. But first, if you'll tell us I got a specific question for you here. Who in your life best exemplified genuine influence, the kind that you write about in the book?
Oh, my dad, absolutely. The greatest I have ever seen in terms of having people skills. And with him, it was just a knack. I mean, he just a great soul who really cared about others, and that communicated very naturally. With me, it wasn't so much that. I did not have the love of people and the interest in others. I think that my dad naturally had. With me, I had to work at it. But the great thing was, by watching him and getting to see what really worked, I could emulate that and sort of become that person. You know what I'm saying? Because you start to see that really it's a nice feeling to be interested in others and ask them questions and want to get to know them, and know that when you want someone else to do something that's going to benefit you, you make sure you benefit them at the same time. And you find out it's just like with John David Mann's in my original book, The Go Giver. We talk about, the fact that it's both a nice way to live life, a fulfilling way to conduct business, and the most financially profitable as well. So so this is something that, with all the books I've read on influence and persuasion, people skills, and I've read, I don't know how many of them, but a ton of them, it's a fascinating topic to me, and one that I've been interested in for years and years. And I've learned so much from every book I've ever read on it. But I still go right back to my dad when it comes to, really what it's all about. So I had a huge advantage in that regard. We could unpack a lot from just that beginning right there, because it is something, especially in the age that we live in now with influencers. We hear all the time influencers, and we tie that most of the time to somebody who had the most likes on a post or the most followers that may or may not even be seeing the post that they're sending, right? And then we call them influencers and stuff, and they are, right, in their own right, but not in the way that we're unpacking here. Most of life is done face to face, business to business, day to day, right? And how are we going to all do what we want? And I think that's the purpose of what our discussion is today. And in your book, you state that compromise really means nobody getting what they really want. Is there a better way to approach the deal? Like, you want to expand upon that? Yeah, one of the characters in the Go Giver Influencers says to his protege that compromise comes from a Greek word meaning no one gets what they want and everybody feels lousy about it. That doesn't really come from that Greek word, but it could.
It might as well.
Yeah, by the very nature of compromise, you're giving up something. Okay.
Now, by the way, that's not to say compromise is never called for. Of course it is. There's very appropriate times to compromise. But we don't want that to be the focus. We would much rather people focus on collaboration as opposed to compromise, because when you collaborate, it's two people getting more of what they want. Whereas with
Yeah.
compromise, it's two people getting less of what they want in order just to get along.
Oh,
Fantastic.
perfect definition. Perfect definition.
Yep.
And of course, I love the way the Go Giver books flow, the parable type of a setting. And I found the two main characters in this, and I won't go into too much because, guys, if you just need to go get the book and read it for yourself, right? I'm not going to tell you everything. But Jillian and Jackson, those were the two main characters in this. And so my question to you is, was there anything in your life, in your real life, that really spawned this type of a story, especially since I know that you have a love for animals and Jackson's was a pet food company. So did that come from real life in any way?
Yeah. And, John David Mann, also a great pet lover. So when we thought about making that the theme, he was very agreeable to that. And, and so that was a big part of that. I think in terms of the incidents in the book, because I've said before, in the original Go Giver book, there were a lot of things in that story that actually happened to the co-authors in real life, and we just put them into the story. With this one, I don't think there were as many actual situations that took place, other than just the principle of having to work with someone who you just didn't see eye to eye. Jackson and Jillian at first, right? And the funny thing about them was they each had something the other wanted.
Right.
But they couldn't get past their own belief systems, looking at the world and seeing the way they think things are supposed to be. So, those things, of course, it happened to all of us before we learned how to adjust and handle them better.
Yeah, I to me, that's one of the great takeaways. Like, they did both. They both could complement and do complement each other and what they needed, and yet, like you said, they're so blinded by what they're taking care of themselves and making their check marks right. They're not realizing that if they help make that other person's check marks right, they're going to get everything they want plus. Exactly. And I definitely think we see that in the world as a whole. Like, that's an interesting concept, especially in the world we live in today, right?
Yeah. Now, I know in the book there are 5 secrets to genuine influence, and I'm going to ask you, out of those 5, which one, let's say in today's very polarized world that we live in, unfortunately, which of those 5 secrets do you think that we need most urgently, or is there any one?
So, they work together holistically, but I'd say you've got to start with that first one, which is to master your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's where it all begins, because until you're in control of your own emotions, until you're in control of yourself, there's really no way to take a potential negative situation or a negative person and really make it a win for everyone involved, right? And we all, we've all done this, of course. And,
Sure.
As human beings, right, we have, allowed someone else, right, someone else's words or actions to cause us to feel, put down or defensive or anxious or angry. And we say or do that very thing that, rather than move us closer to the results we want with another person, instead goes the very opposite way. And we know this, yet we do it. Why? Well, because we're human beings.
Yeah.
And, right, as human beings, we're emotional creatures. I mean, it's how we're built. Now, we like to think we're logical, and to a certain extent we are, but we're pretty emotion driven. We make major decisions based on emotion, and we back up those decisions with logic. We rationalize, which simply means we tell ourselves rational lies. And
Love it.
I love it.
Yeah, we do that in order to justify the emotion-based decision or action we took, which we know is not right. So please know, we're not saying to deny your emotions or lose your, of course not. Emotions are a wonderful part of life. They bring us joy. They make life worthwhile. No, we're just saying you need to be master of your emotions as opposed to your emotions being the master of you. Whereas one of my great friends and mentors, Dante Scumaci, she's an internationally known leadership specialist, team builder, mentor. I love how she puts it. She says, by all means, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car.
Yes.
Oh, I like that.
Super good. I can definitely be transparent here. That is something that it took me a long time to realize in the course of business. I was always the type of guy that approached everything, go along, come along. And then, but then at some point, if I felt attacked or if I really truly was stepped on or stabbed in the back, it happens all the time. I was super mad about it, right? And then I come in and the gorilla and just all this. You don't get anywhere with all of that, and she's the one first taught me the Dr. Wayne Dyer quote, which I love to this day. Like, you change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change.
Yeah, right.
And it's so powerful. Your emotions are that way. You can't let your emotions dictate or lead. You have to lead with intelligence. Take a deep breath. I like the way you say it. Breathe.
Well, it's sort of like your emotions are your board of directors. They have wisdom to them. They have counsel, but your logical part of you, the logical part needs to be the CEO, the final decision maker. Consult your board of directors, but you're the leader. You need to make the decision, right? And it's the same with emotions and logic. And so when we act out of logic to the greatest degree possible, we're creating that environment where we're probably, where we make a better decision.
Like what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and learn how you can change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
Yeah. Excellent.
Oh, yes, that's true. I was thinking about something Michael's grandpa always used to say, and his grandpa was just full of amazing quotes of wisdom. He always used to say, don't get mad at your money, right? Because sometimes we're looking at a situation like Jackson was, right? And this was, going to Jillian, who was at the bank, and they're trying to figure everything out. And he knew he needed their support to get to that next level. But instead of getting mad at the money, they were able to find that common ground, right? And so getting mad at the money just comes from, don't make rash decisions just for the sake of money.
Yeah.
I think is really what that means more than anything else.
Well, yeah, and handling your emotions. It's definitely handling, like in the context in which my grandfather taught me that. I was upset at the way somebody I was contracting with denied a payment for work that I thought I legitimately should have been paid for. But this particular people that I was contracting with were a very big part of my portfolio. So to burn the bridge over a disagreement on whether or not I should have been paid for the work that I didn't make sense in the overall scheme of things. And my grandpa was just like, what are you talking about, man? You're like, but to me, I was just like, oh, they beat me out of this, instead of seeing the blessing that they were in those other things. And interestingly enough, as time went on, they put 10 times that back in my plate a different way. And so if I'd have just kept on with my anger and stood my ground, because that's part of that you teach in that book, right? Let go of being right. Like sometimes we just die on the wrong hill.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a great point, Michael, because and always says, let go of having to be right, which doesn't mean you don't want to be right. Don't get me wrong, right? Don't get me wrong. You want to be right, right? But it's that you lose your attachment to having to be right, or having to be right 100%, or having to be right 100% about everything. And there's two wonderful things that happen when you can lose that attachment. One is you go into learner's mode. So you actually get to learn more because your mind is open to the fact that you probably don't know everything. And so you actually put yourself in a position of being right more often. This is in direct contrast to that person whose life philosophy seems to be, my mind's made up, don't confuse me with the facts.
Yeah.
They're not really able to know anything more than what they already know. And with people like that, a lot of what they, are sure they know, it's kind of wrong. All right. And so that's the first part. But the second part about letting go of having to be right, and this kind of ties into what your grandpa said, and that is that when when the other person senses that you're not just looking to hold on to a position and be right, especially by making them wrong, well, they drop their defenses and they understand that, that you're simply looking for the truth wherever that truth may lead.
Mm-hmm.
And people will follow our lead when it comes to that. And that's why it's up to us as the genuine influencer to kind of lead the way and set the tone.
Well, out of the 5 secrets, Bob, which do you think is the most difficult for human beings to master?
Probably the second one, step into the other person's shoes, or what we call understand the clash of belief systems. Because as you know, we all grow up with a certain set of beliefs or way that, what is a belief? It's a subjective truth. It's the truth only as we understand the truth to be, which means it might be also the truth, but it also might not be, right? And so our beliefs are formed at a very young age before we're old enough to really question premises and, do a check on, well, how did that person, come to that, right? So, so whether we're talking about upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, popular culture, right, and personal experiences, we form a set of beliefs that really dictate how we see the world. I call it our unconscious operating system, right? And the interesting thing about this, though, is that, we have this and so does the other person. But as human beings, we tend to believe that everybody else sees the world basically the same way we do, which makes sense when you think about it. It's all we know. How could it be any different, right? However, it's just not the way it is. We see it from our set of beliefs and they see it from their set of beliefs. And most conflicts occur because two or more people think they're talking about the same thing when they're really not. And so what's very, very important is to be willing to ask questions and really, really listen to what they say. And then even when they answer, to be able to tactfully and diplomatically clarify to make sure that what they said and what they meant is what you heard and what you understood. Very, very important to do that. And that can be tough because it's not something about.
Yeah, that's so true. And I do want to ask this. So let's say you have 2 people, let's say in this book, Jackson and Julian and or Jillian, and they have these perhaps maybe not the right term, but mediators, right? People that are showing them the way to, master their own emotions and listen and all of those kind of things. In real life, do you think it really takes a mediator, somebody outside of us, to help us with the most tough situations? Because I could see that happening. Two people that are really at odds. Does it take somebody in the middle to bring it all together?
It can be helpful, certainly. And especially remember the 2 mentors or mediators in the story weren't taking sides. It's not like Jillian and Jeff were rooting for that. They were rooting for both of them. Right.
Yeah.
And so we find out, of course, with John David Mann's brilliant writing, there's a little twist at the end in terms of what, is. And but I think anytime that you find you're too emotional about something, it's great to bring someone in who is looking to be helpful, not looking out for one person. But, I got to tell you, there's times where I need to write an important letter or email to someone. And, I kind of consider it a strength of mine of how to put together letters and emails. But if it's important enough and I feel I'm too emotional about it, I'll, ask, Kathy Tagenel and Kim Angeli and Jeff West, and John David Mann, can you look this over? Is this me or is this in, what would you? And I'll tell you, there's times I say, you kind of don't want to go there. And right. We all have that. So, I think sometimes just knowing that you're too emotionally involved, it can be very helpful.
Oh, very, very much so. I try to live by 2 rules. In my own life, I've sort of figured out these cycles, right? And handling my emotions. One of the things is the writing it out. Like I'll write out a letter I never intend to send. Like it is literally just get my stuff down. And then usually I go to her first and say, hey, just, I know what you're going to say, but tell me anyway. Right? And of course, you know better than this. But most of it's just getting that out. And then also, I've learned over time, I need 72 hours. Like I need 72 hours to address something, especially the higher emotional aspect of it, and maybe even the bigger the decision that needs to be made. It can't be made in a moment. I need 72 hours worth of contemplation, prayer, and thought into that decision making before I'm actually clear enough to be able to say, you know what? And 9 times out of 10, I throw my own letter in the trash.
Yeah, No, I can't agree with you more. I can't tell you how often I have saved myself embarrassment and hurt, perhaps irreparable, business relationships by waiting that 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And Abraham Lincoln used to do exactly what you just said, Michael. He used to write scathing, cutting, invective filled letters to people he was mad at, right? And then he'd put it in an envelope, sign it, stamp it, whatever, and he'd tear it right up and throw it away. Yeah. And so, that can be just one of the best things you can do at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Another thing my grandpa used to say all the time, he'd say, like, be careful whose hand you shake on your way up the ladder. It might be connected to the butt you have to kiss on your way back down. And so I try to keep that in mind too. And I especially the older I get, I don't want bad feelings. Like, we may never come to an agreement. We may never, but if I've yelled and acted ugly, you're just going to remember that. You're not going to remember anything else. I would much rather us part and, well, you know what? Couldn't budge Michael, but he sure was nice about it.
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
It's huge. Yeah. I think those things are huge.
Well, being able to say no and being able to do so gracefully is one of the most important things. Oh, in fact, if you'd like, I'll take you through that right now. That seems to be very helpful, because a lot of times, we're asked to do things that we either just don't want to do, or really our bandwidth is such that if we say yes to this, we're having to say no to things we shouldn't be saying no. You know what I'm saying? And
sure.
And there's times, again, you just let's say, for example, you're asked to be on a some kind of committee at your local PTA or the charity you're involved in, or whatever it happens to be. You're asked to be on a committee, and for whatever reason, you really just don't want to. Okay. Now, there's a saying, and this was being taught for a long time, and I still hear this, and I kind of cringe, and that's when people say, well, no is a complete sentence. Well, I mean, literally it is. I mean, no is a complete sentence, but it's not a real good one, I don't think, unless you want to be rude and turn somebody else off and, kind of close the door to any. I mean, you're really, hey, would you serve on this? No. It just, it's not congruent with your value system of treating people respectfully. So I don't think that's necessarily a good one. Then there's the people say, well, tell a little lie, like, well, I would, but I'm too busy. The problem with that is a couple fold. One is, it's not, you're not too busy. It's that you don't want to do it. You don't value doing it as much as not doing it. And so if you say you're too busy and the person's able to kind of come back and answer that objection and share with you why it won't take up much time, or if they say, well, that's okay, we're doing it again in 6 months, I'll circle back with you and ask, then you just kick the can down the road. And eventually you're going to have to admit that you are kind of lying, and you're not going to feel good about yourself, and they're not going to feel good. So here's a way to do it that if you follow this, it absolutely will free you up. I think it's a game changer. And it's simply this: when the person asks you to serve on this committee or whatever, you simply say, thank you so much. While it's not something I'd like to do, please know how honored I am to be asked. Okay. Or you can change the language a little bit depending on your style. It can be, thank you so much for asking. While it's not something I'd like to take on, please know how grateful I am for you thinking of me. However you want to do. But the basic is, thank you so much. While it's not something I'd like to take on or not something I'd like to do, please know how honored or grateful I am to be asked. What you did is you honored that person. You were kind and tactful, but you also let them know that the answer is no, and you didn't make an excuse that they could kind of hold on to and come back and answer. And so generally you do that, you're home free. Now, if by chance they kind of say, oh, well, we really need you, can't you? Again, I'd rather not, but thank you so much for asking.
Yeah.
And you're freed. Now, depending upon the person, I would say, make sure you don't give the excuse. That's the thing. Now, there's times, of course, depending on the relationship with the person and what you're being asked, you might have to do that. But by and large, no, if you'll just do it as I just shared, it's amazing that they can't be offended. And I can't tell you how often people have thanked me for the way I said no.
That is really good advice.
It sure is.
Super good advice.
Yeah, I love that, Bob. And I think today we've had so many awesome bites of wisdom from you. We do a little takeaway section at the end of our podcast, and I want to share with you some of the things we took away from you, Mr. Burg, today. So, number one, we rationalized. In other words, we tell ourselves rational lies. That one stood out.
So good. Compromise versus collaboration. I liked your explanation of that. Get less of what you want versus getting more of what you want. When you compromise, everybody's giving something up, but when you collaborate, everybody's getting more. I really like that example.
Mm-hmm.
Super.
And I love your analogy of your emotions are your board of directors, but your CEO should be your logic. That puts a lot in perspective.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then letting go puts you in a learner's mode. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. And to add and like to piggyback onto that, the questions, I think that's so important when we're trying to deal with people in sales. I think it's one of the greatest thing you can do is question and listen. Right. I worked for a guy one time. We installed fences, and he sold fences, and he had the biggest fence company in the county that I worked in and stuff. And he said, I very rarely ever even talk about fences. And he said, when I'm selling, I talk about kids, I talk about their life, I talk about
that interesting.
What they're trying to keep in their yard. And he said, I know that I'm going to get a sale when they say, so are you going to give me the quote? And he said, every time it's a done deal, right?
Yeah.
If I can get them to that point, and I haven't even spoke about fences yet. So I love that.
2 final questions for you, Bob. First, who would you consider to be some of today's top influencers? That's a loaded question, I know, because everybody's definition of influencer might be different, but in the terminology that you use, that's the influencer I trust. Who are some of those?
Well, I'd have to say Elon Musk would probably have to be one of them.
Yep.
While you're thinking, I'll say something about Elon Musk that blows my mind. I know how hard it is to get a building permit in the county I live in. I don't know how this fool's shooting rockets off into space.
It's unbelievable.
Who fills that paperwork out? I want to know what that application looks like, because I don't even know if I can get past my first name on that application.
Yeah, well, he's very influential. Well, there's a couple other people, let's say, who I'm thinking right now who are very influential, but I don't want to even honor them by stating their names because they're not influential, I don't think, in a good way.
Oh, okay. No, that I appreciate.
That's a good answer too.
And I think that is so poignant because it's reflective of how we view our influencers today.
Yeah, maybe back to the definition we talked about early on.
Perfect way to close this out, actually.
Yeah.
Right? It really is. Not to close it out in a negative way, it's super positive. It's like, think before you call somebody a true influencer in life. Think about who or what they're influencing.
For sure.
Bob, that's probably the smartest answer we've ever had to that, actually.
That's a great answer.
Influence is a principle. It can be used for good or evil. So there's 2 ways to influence. One is by persuasion, which is good. The other is by manipulation, which is bad. And so, when someone says, is influence good? Well, it's like saying, is gravity good? Gravity is a principle. It works. Is it good? Well, it's good when it keeps us from floating aimlessly up into space. It's bad when we walk off a 7-story building. And so it's the same with influence. And that's why we want to persuade others, which honors them and helping them get what they want, as opposed to manipulation.
Great.
Oh,
Oh,
fantastic.
So good. All right. Final question. I know you'll nail this one as you have nailed the others. How can people learn more about Bob Burg, work with you, and be a part
hire
of
you
your
to
influence? Yeah.
So at 67, I don't get on planes anymore. So I do not I do not speak at conferences where I have to travel. So unless they're in Florida, where I can drive, I always enjoy doing those, but those don't happen a whole lot. But I am doing keynotes now a lot through virtually. I don't charge as much, but the commute is great. But they can find out. People can find out more at burg.com. And while they're there, if they'd like, they can subscribe to my daily impact email.
Awesome. We'll put that, of course, in the show notes and encourage everybody to become a part of your influence.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say this, I'm on that list, and every time I have received that email, I've read almost every word of it. And that's unusual because we're all very busy, but it's very, very poignant lessons. So Bob, thank you so much.
Oh, appreciate the two of you so much. Thank you for having me.
Ready to change how you're seen and charge what you're worth? If you're not getting enough opportunities to meet with ideal customers, or the prospects you're meeting with just aren't ideal, it's most likely your brand that's holding you back. So if you're a coach, consultant, or expert who is on the rise, you need our ultimate guide to a freedom-based brand. Download it free now at BrandFaceGuide.com.